गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। आज होली आप सबको मुबारक हो। और इसके बाद हम जाएंगे भूटान के अंदर, where we'll see about the Chinese designs and the Indian pushback which is on there. And for this, I'd like to welcome General Ata Hasnain once again. Sir, good evening and welcome to Gana Shot once again, and Holi Mubarak ho.
Jai Hind to all our viewers and Holi Mubarak to everyone.
Thank you, sir. We'll go into Bhutan and we'll see what's happening there. After all, जब हमने ये 2 दिन पहले, when we spoke about those 5 issues which have rattled China, this is the 6th issue which should be rattling China by now. And this happened just one day after we spoke about it. And I think this is a very major thing which our Prime Minister has done by going to Paro, and he spent 2 days there, and a lot of things have happened. I'd like you to first explain the significance of this in the overall context before we get into Bhutan and see the nitty-gritties, sir.
Thank you, General Shankar. It's a pleasure to be with you on this program on the day of Holi today. Bhutan, first of all, my association with Bhutan, I'm happy to always tell our viewers. My father commanded the division in Vinaguri, so he was responsible for the defense of Bhutan, right? And I made a visit to Thimphu way back in 1969, I remember, and took my normal civilian briefings and things like that. And later in life, only did I realize how important it was. Bhutan is one of those countries in India's neighborhood which has stood by India through thick and thin. One of our closest, not allies, I would say, partners in the subcontinent. We stand by with our Treaty of 1949, which dictates the progress of Indo-Bhutan ties. It's an important nation in the various kingdoms along the northern Himalayas, as you see, Nepal, Sikkim, which got subsequently merged and integrated with India. Bhutan did not, and we never had a problem with Bhutan, ever. Uh, there were attempts, of course, one of the very important aspects is that China has resolved its brought problems with every nation of Asia except India and Bhutan. And that clubs us together as in a very important club here. Uh, we have dictated by 1949 treaty. We have guided the foreign policy of Bhutan, and Bhutan's the access to Bhutan all lies through Indian territory. So we've had a very special relationship with it. What needled China all these years is the refusal of Bhutan to establish a full-fledged diplomatic relationship, unlike the other kingdoms which have, uh, and to continue standing by India, to be guided by India as far as its foreign policy is concerned. And as we know, Bhutan believes in gross national happiness. That is the national policy of Bhutan, and they believe that it is best done through the guidance and relationship, a strong relationship associated with India. That brings us to the year around 2017, when you find the configuration is such of terrain, maps, territories, lines of boundary lines here, that China has this area of the Chumbi Valley, which we will discuss, I'm sure, subsequently, sticking out like a dagger into our very, very vulnerable Siliguri Corridor area. And China decided that this was a suitable time in 2017, the beginnings of the standoff with India, where we had a 72-day standoff at a place called Doklam, which is marked here on the map by General Shankar. And this is the place which is located, this plateau, Dolam Plateau as it's called, is located between Bhutan and Sikkim being Indian territory. The Chinese tried to occupy certain features to achieve some kind of a tactical advantage there, which we can discuss separately. Bhutan did not relent. We had access to that area. And we also realized that it was an attempt to try and intimidate us, to get hold of territory which would give it access into our very, very vulnerable areas in the future, etc. But 72 days we stood by, and finally China had to stand down, if you remember, in the month of September, August, September of 2017. Ever since then, China has tried its best to bully Bhutan, to coerce Bhutan, the famous policy of full four-year diplomacy, to coerce to Bhutan with it. But Bhutan has not relented. Many of us as analysts, used to continue imagining in our mind that Bhutan would invariably relent, just like Nepal to some extent had, and that Bhutan would fall to the Chinese as a part of the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, etc. But the Bhutanese did not. I think, therefore, this visit which Prime Minister Modi has made, and coincidentally, the first visit he made internationally in 2014 was also to Bhutan. And the last visit of 2024, before he goes into the elections, is also to Bhutan. I think it's a very significant symbolism which is there. ये दिखाया जा रहा है कि देखिए भूटान हमारे लिए कितनी अहमियत रखता है. And therefore, to travel there to receive the award, the honor which the government of Bhutan, the royal government of Bhutan was giving to the Prime Minister, was something which was absolutely warranted. Many things have transpired there itself. But I think the message which was going out, the strategic message, and all this that we are talking about in the last week, last 15 days, these various issues around the subcontinent which have needled China are all about strategic messaging. There is nothing huge about making a visit somewhere, going to Arunachal Pradesh or something, but it is an effort at communication strategy, communicating your intent to a potential adversary who is attempting to needle you and bully you into thinking in the manner in which he thinks. That's the way we should look at this visit. Very, very important visit. A demonstration, a projection to the world that India will continue to stand by its neighbors. Neighborhood first is the policy that India will have, and it will ensure that China's attempts to try and strangulate India as far as its neighbors are concerned is not going to succeed.
Yeah, I think so. You made the right case, and that India will stand by Bhutan, and strengthen Bhutan to stand against China. And China has been making a lot of inroads, lot of attempts to push Bhutan into a boundary settlement. And our Prime Minister going there just signifies India's resolve to stand by Bhutan and like you said, give a strategic message signaling to China that they can't have their way. Right. It is. I would like to put across certain things, sir, because I think everyone should know. It is just not that the Prime Minister has gone there and he said, "Oh, sab theek ho jayega." It is on the back of a lot of hard work which we put in. That Indian pushback is just not diplomatic or strategic. It is also tactical and at times sub-tactical. So I think, sir, what I'll do now, I'll take you through a series of maps. I'll explain the whole context, and then we'll keep discussing around that. And I'll start with this first map which I showed. To put everyone in context out here. You see, this is the map of the Northeast. What I've shown here, and the two important points for China in this are Doklam and Tawang. Tawang because the fifth Dalai Lama was from there. So if the fifth Dalai Lama is there, Tawang becomes part of Tibet, and then this becomes South Tibet, and it enhances their claim. Doklam because getting hold of Doklam and getting onto the Jamperi Ridge gives a straight view into India, and it can threaten the Siliguri Corridor as shown in the map. So these are the two major things when you look at Bhutan, you have to focus. So Bhutan is super critical because either side of Bhutan, on either flank of Bhutan, sit the two major, friction points or thrust points or ambitions of China. Okay. And if you see onto the right, from the tri-junction of Bhutan, Myanmar and Tibet till the tri-junction of Bhutan, India, and Tibet is the McMahon line. Now, which the Chinese don't accept at this point of time. By and large, the McMahon line is demarcated. Everyone knows where the McMahon line is because it's along the crest line, except at the place of pass near Tawang. And why is it not very clear at Tawang? It is said that the surveyor sir who was doing the survey of this area, he fell in love with a Monpa girl, and after that forgot to make that thing, and he left it for all of us to resolve. But then that is what we have inherited, so that is how it is. So what we'll do, sir, we'll see what are the areas, what are the problems, China has with Bhutan. This is the areas of to difference. At Jakarlung and Pasanglung, China has occupied in Bhutanese territory, which is about nearly 500 kilometers, in two blocks. In the left, it has encroached into about 300 kilometers of in Doklam, which we'll talk of in a little while. And now, recently, it has laid claim to Sakten, which is 100 kilometers well within Bhutan and south of Tawang. And we'll explain the significance of this a little later because people should understand why Bhutan is important, why our Prime Minister has gone there, and what is the strategic significance of all this. Right. Now, when you look at this thing, you find all these articles coming out where Chinese villages are being constructed at a pace which outpaces the talks. Why is it outpacing the talk? To put pressure on Bhutan. You look at this, sir. This is the one of the villages in the north in Pasamlung, right? This left picture is of 2020 and the right picture of 2023. You see the amount of expansion of these villages which has taken place. Similarly, the other one at Jakarlung, this is the picture on the left in October 21, and today where it is, how big it has become. So if you see, China and the north has expanded its villages, and it is, putting pressure on China. It is putting pressure on Bhutan, and their condition is, we'll give up all this if you give Doklam to us and give access to Sakten. See their thing. This is given to you, but give us that. Okay. Now, these are the two flanks. I'll just run through it, and then we'll discuss each one of them. Now, this is the area of, the Chumbi Valley, the Siliguri Corridor, Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan, and the Dolam Plateau, or as it is now known as Doklam, and Tibet. Now, the thing is, Chumbi Valley, as you rightly said, is a dagger which comes down. Now, the thing in this is, the yellow line is the boundary between India and Bhutan or India and China. This is the erstwhile boundary between Sikkim and China. The thing about this boundary is it is demarcated. It is demilitated. It was delimited when Sikkim was there. So there's no thing. But on the right, the black line is the boundary between Bhutan and China, which is disputed. The original line comes in the inner line where China has expanded as the outer dotted line. Okay. Now, people must be wondering that China can come and hit the Siliguri corridor, but look at the closer look. You see the valley and you see the ridge line on the left. That is the Sikkim ridge line, which consists of Nathula and Jalapla. On the right are equivalent heights at about 14,000 feet with one major pass called Tremola. And the Chinese have to come up, climb up, and then get hold of Jampheri Ridge and then go down. Your views on this, and first and foremost, I would like you to explain to the readers, all our viewers, whether China can really do that, and is this a threat which we really, which is made of, or is it okay? It's there, we can handle it. Your views, sir.
Thank you. First of all, you put it together very, very well, I must say. My experience goes back to the time when I was a young company commander in the area of Nathula, Yakla. From there, which used to go down. In those days, there used to be another division on the other side of Kupu, which used to be existing there. And so this area was not under our division. But subsequently, obviously, this area has all come under the division in Gangtok. Now, the important thing here is, why is China needling Bhutan on this particular boundary? For whatever other reasons, there can be reasons of graziers and this and that. There is that the tactical part of it is the most important. This is the shortest route that the Chinese can use to try and cut off the Siliguri corridor. You see, when we were discussing the importance of Bhutan, perhaps one thing which I missed out perhaps telling you was the connectivity of the rest of India with the northeast is through the Siliguri corridor, as you can see here. And the vulnerability of the Siliguri corridor to the closest point from Tibet, from the Chinese side, is through the Chumbi Valley. It's as close as a crow-fly distance of about 50 kilometers, right? The Jamferi Ridge is the area to which you have to climb from that side, and from there to come down towards our side. But subsequently, you can have infiltration and all kinds of things which can go on simultaneously. The issue is, you can't come and cut off a national corridor of this kind with few tactical and sub-tactical actions. This will have to be a large-scale offensive, which will have to go. But if you launch a division or a corps-sized offensive through a constricted area like the Chumbi Valley, with the Indian state of Sikkim on your west and Bhutan, the friendly state with India, on the east, and through this constricted area, you are asking for problems. Tactically, it is absolutely unsound to try and wedge your way, push your way through a narrow constricted valley and leaving your rear open completely. All that India will have to do is to then just shut off the rear and block off all the troops that the Chinese have been able to induct towards the Siliguri corridor. Now, therefore, there's a need for creating the space for maneuver. Right? Even in the mountains, a lot of people will tell you, mountains mein to seedha hamla hota hai. It's not so. There is maneuver. Mountains may be bahut maneuver hota hai. Right? You need space. You need space for your logistics. You need space for your launch pads, etc., for your guns. General Shankar is a gunner. My old 41 RT DOC. Right? He's the one who's taught me a lot of gunnery. The guns are required here. Ammunition is required. The moment you talk about guns, you need ammunition. So space is the biggest constraint, and then you need to have your flanks reasonably secure. That you can only secure if you've got space to do so. But here, if you've got a narrow, constricted corridor, obviously those who are sitting on the heights on either flank are going to come down on you very, very heavily. So this is going to be an ongoing thing from the Chinese side. To think that Doklam in 2017, we resolved Doklam is a misnomer. We obviously did not resolve it. After 72 days, the situation developed in such a manner internationally. There was the BRIC summit and things like that which were happening in China. And they somehow brought down the pressures at that particular time. But they have continued to build up assets in this area. Although those assets are right in front of us, they can be seen by the naked eye right in front of us. Building up those assets to be available to us to take on regular observed shoots is something also which is a very, very debatable kind of a military decision that they have taken. So this is the situation as far as Doklam is concerned. And this threat of trying to get this territory, which the Bhutanese territory, to create a tactical advantage for themselves will continue to quite some time unless this whole issue can be resolved amicably. Yeah.
And the thing is, they'll continue to make it a psychological issue. It's not a feasible issue. So I'd like to just highlight one thing. Way back in 2001, when I was doing the higher command course, in a war game in higher command, I was made the Red Land commander as the Chinese commander. And they said, okay, now you plan for China. And they gave me all the troops, everything. He says, we want you to cut off the Siliguri corridor. I tried my best, sir. I must tell you this. I couldn't achieve it. What I just want to prove what you're saying. It's not easy for any force to come through the Chumbi Valley in strength and, weather the fire along this narrow corridor where there's no space for deployment. Small troops might come, small body of troops might come. And I still remember telling someone, I said, sir, anyone who goes through Chumbi Valley is going through a one-way street because he'll never come back. India will just catch them and put them wherever they have to be put. So it's not an easy thing for them to do. And in 2017, like General Hasnain was saying, this is the location of the standoff. If you see, if they had come to that standoff and gone ahead, then they had an easy direct access down to the south. But now they have expanded to the west or to the right, as you see the map, and in the and little expansion, and that takes them along the Amochu, which goes to the west, and then it goes away from the Siliguri corridor. So actually, we are pretty strong out here. And if they have to go into that, they have to go into another narrow valley, and where they'll have all problems. So for those people who think that the chicken neck can be cut off and the Siliguri corridor can be cut off and all that, I mean, that is wishful thinking for China.
I just like add one thing in this. Of course, the Chinese are adept at infiltration. In 1962, much of what happened was because of infiltration. You see, my unit was fighting the action on the other side of Sela at this famous place called Nuranang Jaswantgarh. But subsequently, we found after beating back the conventional attacks, all the infiltration took place around us. The Chinese are adept at it. They could do the same thing here. But at the same time, just remember, at some stage, even infiltrated troops require to be maintained. You see, infiltration-trained troops can't go to the other end of the world and go to Bangladesh and say, we are going to now take over Bangladesh. They will require guns, they will require ammunition, they'll require water, and they'll require food. Yes, in today's environment, you can supply it with drones to some extent, but no, its force cannot be sustained forever in this manner. You have to open ground routes, and ground routes through the Chumbi Valley are near nigh impossible.
Yeah. So this is where we are. Militarily, we have given great strength to Bhutan. So that's the first part. Okay. Now we'll go back. We'll look at the Tawang part. Look at the Sakten sanctuary. The Sakten sanctuary is 100 kilometers inside Bhutan, with no road connectivity from the border, or almost negligible road connectivity, nothing. It has got no contiguity with China at all. Yet they have claimed it. And why? Because it's in the area of Tawang. This is it. China laid claim to Sakten sanctuary. It is not, this headline is a bit of a misnomer with strategic eye on Doklam. It is not so. Sakten has got a deep meaning. We'll explain that. Now, this came about in 2020 when things were going hot in Eastern Ladakh. Before that, China never had a claim on Sakten. The only places of their claim was on the north, which I showed, and Doklam they had encroached by then, because 2017 happened, Doklam happened, 2020 is what I'm now talking of. So they had 3 years they had spread. Now this is Sakten. Have a look at Sakten. It is a flat, open valley, right? And where, you can easily paradrop a set of people. Okay. Okay. Now, why is Sakten important? I'd like to explain, and I'd like to explain as an extension of what General Hasnain said. His battalion was there, south of Tawang, at this place called between Noranang and Jaswantgarh, and they fought a valiant battle, right? And they defeated the Chinese in the initial phases. It was only when the infiltration took place that we got, stuck. And, chaos happened and things like that. But how did it happen? Understand this, and I'll explain to you what is the relationship between what happened then and what might happen tomorrow. What's the plan, Chinese plan ahead? You see, in 62, when the Chinese came, they came along 3 axes. One was along the Kenzamane axis, which is the Tagla Hatungla axis. The second was the Bumla axis, directly to Tawang, which is the 2 main axes. They also came from Tulungla, very high pass. It's about 6,000 plus kilometers. In fact, I've been there myself, sir, when I was a young officer. And I'm not so young in the sense I've been there in about 92. It's about at 6,000 plus. And they came through this. And when they came through this, they, came further down to a place called Mago. From Mago, in 1962, they came down to a place called Poshingla. Body of troops came down to a place called Sapper. Next to Sapper, there's a place called Muna Camp. They put a roadblock there. They put a roadblock in another place called Nukmadong. All this happened when the attacks from the north were going on. As a result, there was panic in India. Right? We felt, look, the Chinese behind, the Chinese ahead, and then the whole thing, the fiasco happened. What are Chinese doing now? Look at this. This is Sakten. Now you see the yellow lines. The idea for them is do a paradrop in Sakten, where the area is there, and from there occupy the same road, which goes to Tawang from the plains at somewhere there. Maybe not Nukmadong and Sapper, but somewhere there. And then do a link up through the ground or whatever, however they're planning. So that if you see, this is a mirror image of whatever they did in 1962. So your views on this, and then we'll see how we are defending Sakten.
You have described it so well, almost like a staff college or like the higher command kind of briefing that which is given there. I would 2 or 3 points to add here. Number one, in 1962, it is between Sela and Sapper Camp, this area, where my unit, which is coming down in 2 columns, that time the famous 62 Brigade commanded by Brigadier Hoshiar Singh was divided into 2 columns for the withdrawal. And one of those columns got stuck very badly between Sapper and Sela. That's where we lost a large number of our officers, gestures, and men. And the second column, most of the second column actually moved into the Bhutanese territory and came out from Bhutan southwards, right? So it's an important aspect which you have said. There are lots of routes which are leading from Sakten all the way towards the road which is going between Sapper and Tawang. And now with the Tawang tunnel, with the Sela tunnel, you see with the Sela tunnel, the road connectivity is 24/7. And there's obviously going to be improvements in the overall connectivity as we go into the years hereafter. But having this presence at Sakten, doing a paradrop there, and coincidentally, I have interviewed a large number of prisoners of war of my battalion of 1962. And what I learned from them is survivability of the PLA soldiers of that time. They may be much softer today. PLA soldiers of that time, they only survived on a thing called sattu, right? You know what is sattu. So they all survived on this, and they came with sattu loaded on their backs. This was the only thing for 15 days that they were eating there. Of course, they can live on very little, but at some stage, as I said, you require a regular resupply. And therefore, as you can see, there is no connectivity that is available to Sakten in future. They would plan it if they are laying claim to it. They would obviously plan to achieve some kind of a connectivity so that you can have an initial paradrop and subsequently connect up through the connectivity out here. This will make our the routes leading to Tawang, extremely vulnerable. And the fact that he calls Tawang and he calls this area around Tawang is all as southern Tibet only substantiates his thing. He tries to add more and more weight to it. He's adding more and more weight to it now by laying claims to these portions of Bhutan so that in future he can only expand his claim lines.
Yeah. So this is where his design is. What is his design? These are the Chinese designs we are now seeing. And in Doklam, we've told you what the Indian pushback is. We'll now tell you the pushback here also, so that you understand there's a pushback, military pushback, and every pushback is happening. Okay. Now we'll see. The first pushback, which we have already put the cart before the horse, and we've said that, look, the Prime Minister has gone there. He's going to receive he's already received Bhutan's highest civilian award, and we've strengthened Bhutan. We have given them a lot of packages. We've also, going to strengthen their hydropower potential, all that, right? And they have a lot of hydropower potential. Okay. Now, you also have to understand, China is aggressive here, which we have been telling you from beginning. And all these clips or all these news extracts are from South China Morning Post. We are not reporting what Indian Express is telling you or what Hindu is telling you. We are telling you what China is thinking, because it's important for us to understand what China is thinking about this whole game. Okay, China has also protested about this tunnel opening, which we also said earlier. Okay, now this tunnel, we've made this tunnel, right? We've described this in the last episode when we spoke about how we have rattled, how China has rattled because of other things, and now this is the sixth issue which will rattle China. It has rattled China. We'll come to it a little later. Now we have spoken as otherwise. You see the road from the plains to Tawang and to Bomdila, that is on the LAC, and where Sela tunnel is. Okay. Now what we have done here last year is you see this? This is the official intimation of the Gajraj Corps, which is situated in Tezpur. What did they do? They opened a firing range in this area. This is this is what we have done already 1 year back. And what is that? We have fired there. They have carried out surveillance and firepower exercises, and with special forces and aviation and also Central Armed Police Forces last year. And we are now fully prepared here. What is the significance of this? Look at this. This is where I've shown the guns. This is where the guns they fired from. Earlier, we never had this. You see the red line, that's the road from, Bomdila and, plains going up to Sela. Sela tunnel is at the top. I've shown it here. Okay. Where are we firing here? That area I have shown. Where is Sakten? It's in line. Where are the likely roadblocks which are likely to come up or which they were aiming at or which came up in 1962 are there. I have marked two. One is at Nukmadong, the other is at Munakam. Now with our guns there and with people there and our exercises which we've been carrying out and the Central Armed Police Forces also synergized into our plan, Sakten or these places cannot be occupied. If they are occupied, they'll buy it. So your views on this whole story which we have done and where we had already given a pushback to China.
Absolutely. Now, this is a very good terrain study, I think, which has been done. Keeping in mind what happened in 1962, because as I was explaining to you, 62 was all about this road and this connectivity, the rapid panic which developed because of the infiltration. Now, that infiltration, I suspect, is something which is going to again be one of the major aspects of Chinese strategy in the future. Therefore, preempting it, understanding what the importance of it is, and then catering for it by establishing certain bases, familiarizing yourself, establishing the basic infrastructure of roads, tracks, etc. They don't have to be highways leading to those areas. The army just needs basic roads, class 9 roads, perhaps class 18 roads leading up to those areas where you can set up your shelters, you can set up your small camps, etc. And from where you can carry out your forays if required. That is the manner in which domination is always done. You would have always heard this terminology, domination. It is very often used in the parlance of counterinsurgency and counter-terrorist operations. But in conventional operations also, remember, you are not tied down to this thread of this road leading up to the Sela Pass or the tunnel and then exiting from there. You have to look at both sides, the flanks, and particularly here, because the flanks which are coming from Bhutan, that's the flank which is the vulnerable flank here. So this is what is being looked at, and I'm sure this is only the beginning. No, this is only after the claims have been put to Sakten that they have done this kind of a thing, and this will probably build up more. As we see construction of more roads in this area, you will probably find many more steps being taken to provide flank protection, make sure that the higher hilltops, etc., are occupied not only by physical occupation, but also by ensuring that you have your antennas, your aerials, you got your radio relay in place. In the future, you'll have to cater for your drones and see your drone facilities will have to come up in these kind of areas. All this is looking at the futuristic aspect. And I'm glad that Eastern Command and 4 Corps are up and about and doing this very professionally.
Yeah, and you have to understand the moment you have the ability to get guns up here. Actually, sir, in this area where I've shown the gun positions, road has come up till there.
Come up till there.
And come up till there, and maybe it's gone a little beyond also, which I really don't know. I'm sure it would have gone up by now. And they've taken Bofors also there. They fight Bofors here. So the moment you have this kind of a ability that you can take long range guns here, right? And now you see Sakten, which is on one flank, you can get to that. On the other side also, you'll be able to fire. 40 kilometers is a big thing. You can now fire on the other side of the road, north of the road, if there's any incursion from there. Or men can go, or infantry can go, and actually, block people at Sakten itself. Because they will come if the Chinese do come and do an airborne operation and all that. First and foremost, if they do it now, they'll get shot out of the air itself. That's a thing, the way we are going about things. That we should be very clear. Even if they do establish a base out there, everything, our infantry can go and block them. And we will have the complete ability to fire with and support them with our artillery, which the Chinese won't have.
I would add one thing here, Jan Shankar. You see, this is where one is reminded about communication strategy, which I spoke about in the beginning. Lots of actions that we are taking and demonstrating. The Chinese are adapted it, as you are aware. They adopted this 1993 doctrine of war under informationized conditions, which has led from one thing to the other. And you see, even at the height of April-May 2020, the demonstrations that the PLA was carrying out in depth behind Eastern Ladakh, 100 kilometers behind, firing demonstrations, drills, mock drills being conducted, few things here and there, moving around, drones moving, etc. They thought that this cannot cow down the Indians. There's a huge kind of a demonstration of technology, etc. Now is the time. I'm glad we have done some of it. But we need to do this, I think, more professionally and project it to the world. We are not behind. We are not behind in any way. In 4 years' time, since 2020, we have made tremendous strides. And the Chinese should be very clear about it, that India has made huge strides. This thing which is worrying them of adding 10,000 troops in Eastern Ladakh is something which is obviously a flow out from this fact that they were not expecting the Indian response to be so quick after 2020.
No, sir. Not only that, what I'd like you to highlight to everyone is now you have a capability of defending your rear. You have the capability of taking your troops forward 24/7 through the Sela tunnel. So actually, you have done something more. Overall, strategically, I think we have pushed the game farther away.
A lot of people think that we are talking a lot of tactics and a lot of strategy online, but they do not realize that this is what is the correct projection. Two generals of the Indian Army who know these areas speaking about this is a good conveyance of our strategic message to whoever may be listening, that the Indian Army is not something which can sit back and watch things happening across the border. This thing which we are doing of the Zojila tunnel, what we have done of the Atal tunnel, what we have just done with the Sela tunnel is a huge thing. You see, tunneling in these areas is something the Chinese have been doing it for a long time, I know, but we've been sort of a little late in catching up, but we have caught up now. And now that a tunnel like the Sela tunnel has been constructed there, 24/7, 365 days of the year, we can supply, resupply, and ensure the reinforcements are there. Otherwise, given certain given terrain conditions, given climatic conditions, there would be moments when the entire Tawang sector would be actually cut off, and you would have nothing except dependence on your stocked supplies and on whatever troops are available there at that particular time to fight it out. It would be virtually suicidal. And we've done it all these years. But now with this availability of this tunnel, it's a game changer, as we discussed in our last episode also. It's a complete game changer.
Yeah, not only that, just think the lifeline to our troops up, who are on the LAC is through this road. Now that, like General Hasnain said, that road is through, it can't be cut off. And, it can't be cut off by weather, it can't be cut off by enemy also. That's the kind of a thing that means your logistics route right to the front lines are strong. And once our men who are on the LAC are clear that they're going to be resupplied with ammunition, everything, then the Chinese can take a walk and they can take a walk the other side. That's the way I've looked at it. And I've walked on most of these routes, sir, and I know how well trained our men would be now. When I did it, I'm talking of 30 years back, but now things would have changed because a lot of infrastructure has come up, everything has come up.
Psychologically, our viewers should know psychologically, physically, the capability of our men to undertake the kind of rigors which this terrain offers. There are not many people in this world, not many armies in this world. I doubt the PLA has that capability to sustain itself.
Capability, yeah. I have no doubt, sir. I've served along the LAC. I've served in in the Eastern Ladakh area. I've served in the central sector. I've served in Sikkim, and I've served in this very area. Wherever I've seen the PLA, they have a lot left to be desired. And I think we have a tremendous advantage here. And add to this, I'll get back to what we started with, our Prime Minister's visit. And where does that lead the whole thing? And then we'll take some questions after you give a strategic wrap to this whole issue.
You see, we discussed the 5 issues which could be needling, rattling the PLA and the Chinese leadership, etc. At that time, of course, we also included the maritime zone, and we looked at the continental area. We explained it in fair depth. I will bring in a small reminder to that. Remember the fact that the Chinese are comfortable in the mountains, high up in the high Himalayas. The Tibetan plateau on the other side is flat, open, rolling territory, rolling country. Their logistics is not a major problem. They can come in, they brought in the railways, etc. over a period of time. Therefore, for them, it is simpler to do anything militarily here. For us, it's a major challenge because this side, the Himalayas, offer much more difficult terrain, rocky, outcropped all over the place, constructing roads, etc. The only advantage we really have is the advantage that the Air Force has got of having all its airfields at much lower altitudes. But come down into the domain of the maritime areas, it is there that India has got the advantage. Keeping in mind the fact that this is the Indian Ocean. Look at the peninsula jutting into the Indian Ocean. See the sea lines of communication from the Straits of Malacca near Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, and from there stretching all the way to the Gulf of Aden, going to the Red Sea or going towards the Persian Gulf. This is all under the watch of the numerous naval bases that we possess here. Or we've also got them extended into the Lakshadweep area. We've got the whole theater command in the area of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, right? This makes it extremely difficult for the Chinese, for the PLA Navy, because they are on the other sides of Malacca. They have to come from all the way from that side. You can see where Hong Kong is written. From there all the way to the Straits of Malacca, they don't have those kind of bases except maybe at Gwadar and at Djibouti. Those are the 2 areas. And we have seen what they've been able to, whatever the Indian Navy in comparison to the PLA Navy has been able to achieve in the Red Sea and off late in anti-piracy operations. The world is saying wah wah, basically, for the Indian Navy. So all this is an important aspect. In the last couple of weeks, this demonstration that we are now balancing ourselves between the north, that's the Himalayan continental belt area, the continental zone, and the maritime zone, which is where we have our advantage. We are balancing it out. We have put our focus in the Himalayas. We are not going to compromise on territory, but equally, we are going to ensure that the maritime zone remains under our control. No one is saying that this is our territory, right? We have an exclusive economic zone, and that's about all. The rest of it is international waters. But forces which are not very friendly, operating in these areas against forces which are against our interests, which are working against our interests. And you can see at the moment, you've got spy ships after spy ships from the PLA Navy which are entering through the Straits of Malacca, all being monitored in these areas. That's about all they can do, spy. They cannot be effective from an executive naval angle, right? So all this has to be kept in mind in conjunction with this fact that India has demonstrated its capability and its conviction that it will look after its neighborhood. Since we spoke last, we have also had news of Mohammed Muizu coming in, Maldives, asking for a loan from India, and we have seen how is that whole issue progressing. After asking the Indian defense personnel to leave the shores of Maldives, he's ultimately been forced to come back here, because you have to, I reminded you last time, even potable drinking water to Maldives under emergent conditions has been provided by India. So you have to respect the region in which you are existing. Can't somehow suddenly depend on the United States of America or China to bail you out. You will have to ultimately come back to India. I think this is the strong messaging which is going out at this particular time. Very, very important, this messaging.
Yeah, and you have to understand, which in one of the last episodes, we had Commodore Wasson. He said China has to suffer the tyranny of distance. The tyranny of distance from Hong Kong to the Gulf of Aden, which General Hasnain also said. And very important, see, in the past, sir, I must mention this. In the past 3 or 4 episodes, I have been around this for some reason or other. I did one with you. I did one with our Ambassador Gurjeet Singh on, the anti-piracy operations and the maritime issues with Commodore Wasson, who's the director of the Chennai Center for China Studies, and a lot of focus on the maritime issue. One thing which has come out, and today has come out very amply, is earlier we had this problem of continental versus maritime, or orientation thinking. Today, we are looking at a balance between continental and maritime. In fact, I put it this way, we are looking at a continental plus maritime outlook. And this is where a macro change in the Indian strategic outlook is taking place. I would like you to highlight this a bit, because this is a major change which many people don't seem to understand.
First of all, I must give credit to one personality of the Indian Navy who actually used these terminologies the first time in an article, and actually gave India this whole concept of the continental versus the maritime domains. That is Admiral Raja Menon, right? Way back, I think it's sometime in the late 90s or the early part of the millennium, that he wrote this in a middle piece in the Indian Express. I picked it up much later and dwelt on it, developed it much further. And that is the time when I realized that we were being shy. We were very ignorant of our maritime capability and what we could achieve through that. I think the coming of the Andaman and Nicobar Command in 2001 was an outcome of this entire thing. Although it was not taken to any level, it was just the Andaman and Nicobar Command was created with very, very limited resources. I think creating one more 3-star plus officer was more the intent than anything else, and nothing really was achieved out of it. Right? It's I think after the 2014, and when all this walk-in operations had taken place after 2005, 2014, this realization started coming. I wrote on it many times. I still remember I wrote major papers on it in a magazine which used to be published in Chanakyapuri, I remember. And people were surprised, why are you taking the side of the Navy? I said, no, we don't take the side of each other. We look at India's interest, strategic
Yeah.
interest. Yeah, India's strategic interest. And I, as a landlubber, can tell you, and one look at it, it tells you that actually it's the Indian Navy which rules the roost as far as this is concerned. And I became the brand ambassador of the Indian Navy, talking everywhere, and people were always questioning me, why are you so pro Navy? I said, I'm not pro anything, I'm only pro India. Right? So I think over a period of time, this realization has come, and slowly a creeping balance has emerged. In 2020, when all this happened, a lot of us wrote at that time too, that see, all this is happening, this so-called wolf warrior diplomacy, etc., is all to concentrate our attention towards the north, because they know what is the vulnerability in the maritime zone. And if we continue falling for this, we are only playing up to them, playing into them. I think since then, a lot of water has flown under the bridge, and this thinking has now cemented. And therefore, what you're seeing, these anti-piracy operations, a lot of people look at it whimsically and say, oh, this is not against an enemy,
Oh,
this is
no,
not
no.
against a fixed enemy. It's not. It's like counter-terrorism for the Indian Army. You see, if I have had experience of years and years of doing it in Kashmir, I know that those units which have experienced this kind of a thing can go into battle and be very effective. Similarly, the same thing that the Navy is facing as far as anti-piracy operations are concerned. The short of huge missiles being fired at them, everything is there. They're going through all the drills. They're going through everything which is required to be done by a military force when it encounters an adversary. So I think this is very good, all this which is happening in this domain at the moment. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I think you made a very important point, sir. I was about to take questions, but I can't let it go. The important point which you made, which I remember 2 years back, I read what Xi Jinping had written. And one of the reasons why the PLA deployment at the Gulf of Aden took place, why Djibouti base was established, his whole idea was that the Navy will do, his PLA Navy will do deployments in this area. They will gain operational experience, and they'll protect the sea lanes of communication, and then they will be able to go down to the next base. But now, come 2 years, 3 years later, what has happened? The PLA Navy is there in Djibouti, and it is sitting tight in Djibouti. It's not getting operational experience. It's not doing anti-piracy operations. Who's getting anti-piracy Who's doing anti-piracy operations? Is Indian Navy. Who's getting operational experience? It's Indian Navy. Right? We are the ones who are establishing a base in Agalega. We are the ones who are establishing a base in Minicoy. We already have something at Andaman Nicobar. Who's strengthening the whole system? It's the Indian Navy. And, you know, I got a comment from someone in one of our episodes, and that was, he says, look, it's not the size of the dog which matters, it's the fight in the dog which matters.
True.
Right?
Very true.
And so it's not the size of the PLA which matters, it's the size of the Indian Navy which matters. And I think we are well on our way to give a very good pushback to China. If I'm sure they've already got this message. And the last thing I'd like to say on this, sir, is that 2 days back, our External Affairs Minister, Mr. Shankar, went to Singapore and he spoke about Arunachal Pradesh. And he said very clearly that Arunachal Pradesh is ours. It is ridiculous for China to think that it is theirs and they can have a claim. And their claims are also ridiculous. And of course, there's been a reaction from China in Global Times today morning. So overall, I think the words which External Affairs Minister used were quite direct and pointed, something which we had not seen earlier so far. So I think overall we've done a lot on this regard. A couple of sentences from you, and then I'll take questions.
No, thank you very much. I think this has been a very important series of episodes which you've just done and on Gunner's Shot, because it gives you, as we said last time, a holistic picture. You can keep looking at Gulf of Aden. You can look at anti-piracy operations. You can look at Lakshadweep, or you can look at something happening in Eastern Ladakh. But unless you get this whole picture, the wholesome part of it, only then does the public understand it. And I think the public in India is now coming of age in terms of strategic culture. Lots of us are involved in bringing this, and I take whatever pains I can take to ensure I go to colleges, schools, wherever I can get, wherever people are inviting me, I go there to speak on these things. And I find tremendous interest